English translation. 574th contact Saturday, the 2nd of November 2013, 1440 hours.
Well, I was lucky because I was not expecting you for 5 minutes since you said you would be here at 14:45 HRS. I just corrected some spelling mistakes with Ava.
I noticed that, and since you were already in your workroom, I just came here.
I also have a question. Florina called up the existing descriptions for the photo book from the computer this week, which you probably received and studied from her, I assume.
That is correct. Last night, she also picked up the others that were still available, but unfortunately, not all of them were.
I will receive the remaining descriptions tomorrow and on Monday, after which Florina will also be able to retrieve them. Actually, we wanted to bring everything together today, but unfortunately this did not happen, so we will have to wait another day or two.
I will inform Florina about this. I find the already existing material, respectively the descriptions of your personality, your mission, and as a herald, extraordinary and very good. The whole of the work surprised me very much, because everything is so appealing, good and positive, that there can be no doubt why only through your personality the mission could find its beginning and why everything could develop in the best possible way as it actually happened.
It must be said, however, that everything would never have got off the ground and could have come about in the way it did if all the group members had not been faithful and extremely helpful in many ways. Alone, I would have stood like a shouter in the desert and would have achieved nothing. Therefore, I owe everyone my deepest thanks. Also now for the descriptions for the photo book regarding my personality in connection with the mission and the contacts with you. In fact, I do not know how to deal with all the good words and the evaluation of my personality myself, except to thank each and every one of you for it.
This is undoubtedly the case, because without the faithful help of all, it would have been impossible to create what has come about. And with regard to everything that is said in good friendship about your person in such a detailed and loving way in the descriptions, you must accept everything as it is written and meant.
That is probably so, but I really do not know if my thanks are sufficient for that, because with the whole thing there is still the decades of unswerving and full commitment of all group members connected, for which I can also only banally thank all of you, who are all dear friends to me.
Your thanks are also expressed through all your work and commitment, from which everyone benefits and is deeply grateful to you for everything that is said and written about you in all descriptions of your personality.
I understand that, but still all I can do is just say a simple thank you.
That will be enough for everyone, I am sure.
You may be right, dear friend.
I am sure of it. But what I want to say now, of course, I have submitted everything to Quetzal, to my daughters Plagia and Simyase, and to our committee. And I should also like to pass on all the thanks I have received to all the members of the core group and passive group who have contributed to the whole of the descriptions. We have consulted and found that it would be very appropriate to make an A5 font out of all the descriptions, which should also be intended for people who do not purchase the photo book, but who would certainly be interested in what is said and understood about your personality and about the mission, and about you as a herald and contact person from the point of view of various people.
Dear thanks, for the thanks to the group members, which I am sure will please everyone. Because of the A5 scripture, this might be a good idea, but I think we should discuss the pros and cons in the core group. But what I really wanted to ask at the beginning, when Florina was at my computer, did she say anything about it? Because something has come up which I would like to know what is behind it.
What are you talking about?
Well, it is actually two things. Last week, Eva and I came into our offices and their both computers were on, even though we had turned them off during the night. Could it have been Florina at work?
That is correct, but it was not only Florina, but also Njana, who both searched the internet for certain information. They told me about it, Also that both of them failed to switch off the computers again when they were startled because someone was tampering with the door. Both of them left the workrooms immediately because they thought someone was coming in.
It could have been, but only if it had been Eva or I. It was probably the night watch who checked whether the door was closed.
That is probably how it would have been.
There was also something else this week. You said that Florina was on my computer. Did she say something that she tampered with it and changed something?
She did, yes.
So it was the girl who put a photo of me in as a screensaver. Bernadette took some photos of me for the photo book, 2 of which I have in my computer. And one of these pictures had been used as a screensaver. Because I do not know anything about it, I had to try to get Bernadette to remove the photo again and put the usual schooner picture back on.
Florina told me about this. She liked the picture so much that she put it in as a screen foreground. As she said, her assumption was that it would also appeal to you, but apparently this was not the case.
In fact, I would have felt quite stupid if I had had to look at my portrait in the computer all the time, so I sought Bernadette's help to remove the photo and put something neutral back in as a screensaver. But something else. I recently watched a program on television about the poison glyphosate. Glyphosate is the most widely used weed killer in the world. It has been on the market for almost 40 years and is used in huge quantities. It is said that it is safe for the human being to ingest only 0.3 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, and that this can be increased to 0.5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. You know a lot about these things. What is your opinion about it?
Glyphosate is dangerous and causes cancer, malformations and miscarriages, as is also the case with all pesticides and herbicides, as well as with all neurotoxins that penetrate and are stored when sprayed on naturally growing foods, such as vegetables, berries, fruits, corn, mushrooms, and grains. These toxins are then absorbed by the human being through food and cause health problems. In addition to cancer, malformations, and miscarriages, all herbicides, pesticides, and neurotoxins that enter the human body through food. Pores and respiration also cause many forms of allergies, although many different diseases also appear, the causes of which are not recognized by terrestrial medical experts. Glyphosate, as well as all other pesticides and all herbicides and neurotoxins, are much more dangerous than chemists, manufacturers, and users falsely claim. On the contrary, the truth is that there is no milligram limit for these substances, because even in the smallest quantities, far below 1 milligram per kilogram of body weight, herbicides and pesticides, as well as neurotoxins, are very dangerous to the human being's health and therefore cause disease. Nevertheless, the World Health Organization and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency consider that the use of these toxins in small quantities is as safe as the use of European authorities. Even the seeds are soaked in neonicotinoids, which also poisons the plants growing from them, and finally, of course, the human being is also involved in the poisonous cycle of chemistry. During growth, the plants absorb the poison, which consists of stable chemical compounds that only break down very weakly and are therefore transferred to the growing plants. Above all, neonicotinoids are used to poison seeds, especially rape, sunflower, and maize. These insecticides are several times more toxic to the human organism than the notorious DDT, which has brought so much misery to countless Earth humans. Neonicotinoids are usually not applied selectively, but often as a preventive measure, which makes the whole thing much worse. Although selective application would have less harmful effects on the human being, the damage to health would still be very serious.
Your explanation is clear and plain, and says that the chemists who brew this stuff are lying, as are the manufacturers and users of these poisons.
That is undeniable.
Then another question. Is there anything new regarding the earthly climate conditions? You told me years ago, before you decided not to make any more predictions, that a new climatic turning point would come in autumn 2013. So far, I have not heard anything about it, and I have also not read in newspapers that anything extraordinary has happened in terms of climate.
What I mentioned at the time was that the number of storms and cyclones worldwide will increase sharply from this year onwards, and that for the first time, a cyclone with a duration of around 375 hours will occur and claim a great many human lives. This will be a typhoon the likes of which have never been seen since time immemorial, and which only occurred in early times of the Earth's development.
Then another question. Is there news regarding terrestrial climate conditions? You yourself have in fact said to me years ago, before you decided not to make any more predictions, that in the fall of 2013, climatically, a new change arrives. Up to now, I still have not heard anything about this, and also have read nothing in newspapers that something climate accordingly extraordinary does arise.
Presently, I think that this will not be accomplished by them in exact measure, because, to my knowledge regarding this, they are not sufficiently equipped. However, what you say is correct and corresponds to what not only my father, but also you variously predicted since 1951, and the governments as well as the radio stations and newspapers before have warned, although you, however, were ridiculed and nothing was undertaken. In order to curb the threatening evil, which as a result only could have occurred if the rapidly increasing overpopulation would have been stemmed and prevented. Only in this way would it still have been possible to prevent the human-caused destruction of nature and the climate.
Yes, I know this, but indeed the predictions have had no effect, because there was no reaction to them afterwards. However, where did this monster cyclone develop and to where will its path lead?
In the southern Pacific, and then to cross over the Philippines into the South China Sea and weaken thereafter in countries on the mainland, where it is to wreak enormous devastation and destruction and bring death to many thousands of humans.
And when will this be? These cyclones have indeed, according to occurrences, also different names.
The disaster has already, in fact, started and develops itself in the following days into a catastrophe. But what now has arisen is only the beginning of still worse to come, because now storms of all kinds and cyclones will rapidly increase in numbers, and indeed worldwide. So in the near future, a devastating storm will also strike Sardinia, while a series of tornadoes will bring disaster to the USA, and regarding the various names of the cyclones is to say that these form in the late summer over tropical oceans, as air vortices with mighty winds, with the tropical cyclones being the most dangerous and have reached up to now speeds of more than 270 kilometers per hour, 167 miles per hour. Through these powerful storms, always enormous destructions occur, and many human lives will be demanded. These up to now highest storm strengths increase in the future, however. Consequently, the worst to be expected may exhibit 400 kilometers per hour, 249 miles per hour wind speeds. And as you say, the cyclones have different names according to place and countries. In the Caribbean, as well as in the West Indian Islands and the Gulf of Mexico, they are called hurricanes, compared to typhoons in China and Japan. They are called Willy Willy in Australia and cyclones in the Indian Ocean. Then still, there are the cyclones over the mainland which occur worldwide and are called tornadoes.
Then there is indeed still also the wild storms about which you have spoken, and which already also were predicted since the 1950s by me. The Earthlings are once more again surprised at how enormous the forces of nature are, and that they are steadily becoming worse. However, the reason for this is just that the humans are to blame for this as a result of their overpopulation. Because through its total effects in all ways, it not only very much impairs the course of nature and its order, but even to a great extent destroys it, which no one wants to admit. And if something is said regarding this, then it simply means that the whole of these statements and explanations is absolutely a crazy idea which springs from a demented human brain. The stupidity and lack of intelligence of such adversarial schemers finds at the same time yet a great support by all of those who are simply indifferent in their living for the day and have no thoughts whatsoever about reality and its truth. Consequently, it is totally unimportant to them if thousands upon thousands of people lose their lives through natural disasters and that enormous destructions are caused. And what is now further to arise, namely inevitably, is that scientists will now announce with grand words and establish forecasts that the storms and cyclones and all of the associated destructive events, etc., are to increase. They are exactly then doing this, as though this wisdom would arise from their rubbish and would not have been already predicted since the 1950s. Their self-praise stinks to high heaven and proves once more that their forecasts, speeches, and explanations that they give afterwards just whistle along like the wind. And besides, they also attribute to the sun and its cycles, etc., the blame for the total climate disaster, but not the massive human overpopulation and its degenerations and criminal machinations against the planet and its climate, as well as the flora and fauna of nature.
That about which you speak is true. The irresponsibility of the Earth humans unfortunately recognizes no limits, and this refers to the bulk of Earth mankind. These think only just for themselves and their own well-being, for their personal luxury and value for their money and pleasure. Responsibility and compassion for the entire human community is with the bulk of them just completely foreign, as well as a clear understanding and comprehensive reasoning.
Unfortunately, it is really only a small minority, which is conscious of reality and truth, and to the effective facts regarding the consequences of all of the immensely destructive global machinations of overpopulation. All of the intelligence deficient, especially the stupid, indifferent, know-it-all and high-handed as well as the truth liars. Regarding the overpopulation problem and the all from it imaginable resulting disasters and evils are responsible for the fact that everything is to become much worse than already presently is the case. Through their fault, a worldwide birth control is prevented and overpopulation continues to be driven up, which leads to more and more destruction of fauna and flora as well as diseases, epidemics, and natural disasters. Already for decades, my predictions prove to come true in this form, as well as the refugee and asylum problems, which already are accompanied into small migrations. And also, the whole of nature change and the destruction of nature are unstoppable because overpopulation has prevented this by its criminal machination of the destruction of nature, which already has become fact. Everything is now running for the worst, which only could be somewhat muted if finally a state birth control would reduce the rapid growth of the global population worldwide. Consequently then, together with the normal death disposals, slowly everything could re-regulate, which, however, will take hundreds or even thousands of years to complete. At the same time, though, it is assumed that in advance, the Earth-human civilization does not destroy itself through its overpopulation or by acts of war, which is absolutely within the bounds of possibility if everything is carefully considered and thought about.
Although this will not be the case in the foreseeable future, but actually everything could run on to becoming a reality. If measures are still not introduced to curb the rapidly growing overpopulation, in order to prevent still more violent destruction of nature and its fauna and flora as well as the climate and the planet itself. But now, Edward, I would like to turn to a few more things which I would like to discuss with you in private.
Of course.